Good evening, podcast world. We are so glad you came to join us.
Yes, we are.
Back again for our conclusion.
All right. Yes.
The last week of our life lessons learned on sabbatical. We've been talking about these. It's been amazing.
Man,
tonight.
it's been so good.
We've switched it up.
Yes.
So now we don't just have the voice of Mingo.
No, now you get to see all of me.
We have the full version. I started to say the full Monty, but please no.
Yeah, let's not go. Yeah,
No,
let's not do
not
that. Let's not do that.
And then Sam is hiding in the shadows, which we'll talk about actually.
Perfect segue.
Perfect segue.
Yeah, perfect
Right.
segue for where we're headed.
Segue. So if you're just joining us, we really have had a great time.
So good.
Delving into some of the practical side. We always say this, or we've said it several times. We've done a series 7 weeks on soul care. I would recommend you listen to those.
I highly recommend going back and listening to those. They're so good.
We've just had amazing response.
So good, yeah.
And there's a lot of meat on those bones to
there
really, chew on. So we're not trying to rehash those theologically, but we're trying to take some of the ideas and break them down practically.
Yeah.
Right? So the last one we want to talk about tonight, we talked about slowing down. We talked about Sabbath, silence, solitude, savoring, and because I love alliteration, we'll stick with the S's. So we're gonna talk about shadows.
Yes.
I feel like we need like a Twilight zone.
Yeah, seriously, like some
Here it
kind
is.
of there it is.
Shadows.
Yes, shadows.
Spooky.
Yes.
Bum,
But it really doesn't need to be, because I think sometimes when we think shadows, we think sin.
Right.
Yeah.
But shadows don't have to be sin. I'll give you a definition for shadows we can talk about in a minute. But we really don't. Well, I made this statement a few weeks ago. I don't know about you guys, but I've faced some pretty difficult things in my life.
Yeah.
I've faced some pretty difficult things in 2021. I've faced some pretty difficult things this summer.
2020. We thought 2020 was hard.
Yeah, I thought 2020 was bad. It was a picnic. But of all the difficult things we face, I would face the death of loved ones. I faced financial challenges. I broke my hip. I've gone blind in my left eye. I had all kinds of stuff. But the most difficult thing I've ever had to face in my life is me.
Yeah.
And part of what happened on sabbatical was I slowed down long enough to face me. But a lot of times we don't slow down for silence and solitude, because in those moments we'll have to face ourselves.
It's so good.
And I'm not just talking about our sin.
Right.
Please get that out of your head.
Right,
it may result in some unhealthy behavior, but let's not just assume sin.
Right. That's good. That's good.
Because even if it is sin, there's a root that is deeper than the action.
That's right.
Yes.
Why do we not want to face ourselves? Because facing ourselves requires us to confront parts of ourselves that we would prefer to neglect.
That's so good.
Or forget.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
deny that's there.
That's so good.
Insecurities.
Yes. Absolutely.
Fears.
Yeah.
Anxieties.
Yeah.
Whatever. Dysfunction. Sociologist Parker Palmer says it this way: everything in us cries out against facing our inner self.
Wow.
This is why we externalize everything.
Right.
Because it's far easier to deal with the exterior world. And listen to this. He said, it would be easier to spend your life manipulating an entire institution than it is to deal with your own soul.
Oh, my gosh. That is so good.
Wow.
That is so good.
I mean, let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
I could spend it's easier to spend my life manipulating an entire institution than it would be confronting my own soul.
Wow.
So I that's part of what we dealt with
Yeah.
and on our sabbatical is facing ourselves, facing
Yeah.
some things about ourselves,
Right.
facing ourselves in every season.
Yeah.
Because you face
Wow.
different things in different seasons. You have different challenges. So what is a shadow? If it's not just sin, what is
Yeah.
a shadow? Your shadow is the accumulation of untamed emotions, less than pure motives and thoughts that, while largely unconscious, strongly influence and shape my behavior.
Wow.
So see, we're not talking about the behavior being the shadow.
Right.
We're talking about the influences that cause the behavior.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
We tend to want to look at our other people, especially,
Right.
and judge their behavior. But what is it that's there? So let me say it again. It's the accumulation, because we have a lot of them, of untamed emotions, less than pure motives and thoughts that, while largely unconscious, strongly influence and shape our behavior. They can come in a lot of different ways. It can be jealousy, outbursts of anger, resentment, lust, greed, bitterness. Then it can result in destructive behavior.
Right.
But it can be more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
A need to rescue other people.
Wow.
An overwhelming desire to be liked.
Mm.
A need to be noticed.
Wow.
A need to be appreciated. Inability to stop working. The overwhelming need to be in control.
Wow.
Isolation, rigidity,
Right.
Wow.
being judgmental. We could
Go on
talk
and on
about
and
a lot
on,
of things.
Yeah.
The thing is, the nature of a shadow by nature is hard to get a hold of. I could create a shadow from these lights, and you can never grab it, and
Right.
it moves.
Yeah.
As I move, it moves. So it's hard to pin these things down, but in the presence of God, he can show them to us. He can deal with them, right? So I want us talk to me. I mean, just kind of before we go on,
Yeah.
you guys throw some thoughts in there with us on that.
Yeah, I think for me, I know that, as we made our transition from where we were, for about a decade to North Texas, there was a lot of like it's almost like the dam just broke and everything just kind of came out for us. And the Lord did a really deep work. But one of the things that really came was that finding the shadow of overworking, that was something that I used to cope with not facing things that I really needed to deal with. So as opposed to stopping and being with my family and, really discovering that maybe I'm not as good of a dad as I could be, or a lot of those insecurities that I had as a dad, I didn't have to face because I was never with my kids because I was always working. So then, now you had this new season where we were very intentional about, hey, we're working part-time. We're going to come home and we're just going to be a family. And really, the last year has really just been me learning how to be a dad. And it's been really cool. Not to say that I wasn't a dad before.
Right.
But it's like it's on a whole nother level because I was able to really face those shadows and say, hey, this is something that I really need to deal with. And even in that, discovering there's other things that need to be dealt with too.
Great seasons or moments of transition expose shadow.
Absolutely.
I found that in my life. You go through a great transition and exposes shadowy places that are there.
Yeah.
Like you said, it doesn't mean you weren't a good dad. You weren't trying to be a good dad. You weren't intentionally overworking.
Right.
But it becomes a coping mechanism,
Right.
which is a great thing. Our shadow, this is another great statement, is our coping mechanism to deal with the brokenness within us or within the world around us.
Yeah.
Wow.
So your shadow is how your inner child learned to cope with the brokenness in you or around you.
Yeah.
And so transition exposes that.
So
Absolutely.
one of the things that blows my mind about shadows is that they love to disguise themselves
Yes.
as good things.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
so good.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
You
so
talked
good.
about this in your message that there's a lot that like look ugly, but then there's some that like you may really like. You're this coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Because
I'm a hard worker.
Exactly.
Or
Right,
am
right.
I a workaholic that's
That's-
escaping?
Yeah.
It's okay to be needed.
Absolutely, and that's how I justified it. Well, I'm providing for my family.
Yeah.
I
If
mean,
not, I'm an infidel.
We're making
I
more
quote
money than
scripture.
we're making more money than we've ever made, and throw out
We're
all
breaking generational curses of poverty off our family.
they love to disguise themselves.
That's so great.
But that's where it comes from the Holy Spirit helping you identify what is a shadow and what's
yeah,
the grace for what your life is right now, right?
Yeah.
That's so
The
good.
coping
That's
mechanism.
good.
That is so good. Yeah, when I was reading that list a moment ago, I actually thought that again. I thought, some of these, if you just say them as standalones, you'd be like, that's not a shadow. That's
Right.
that's a good
That's a strength.
strong character quality.
Myers-Briggs says it's good.
Yeah, until it's not.
Yeah.
I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, so I don't mind taking charge. I don't mind taking responsibility. But when then that becomes control, and that control then borders into manipulation,
Yeah.
or maybe
Wow.
crosses way over the border into manipulation, it's not then a gift to the world around me. It's a curse
Yeah.
to myself and others.
Wow.
So,
That's so good.
so what I want us to do in our few minutes together tonight is we talked about in the message all kinds of gifts we receive, the negative sides. What happens if you don't face your shadow? We won't get into that tonight. Some benefits of facing your shadow. We
Yeah.
won't get into that. But then we talked about 4 pathways to helping me face my shadow. So these are like practical things. These are like pathways we can travel. So I want to talk about them quickly, okay? So the first one is, if I'm going to face my shadow, I've got to be willing to go down the path of identifying things from my past that are affecting my present.
Wow.
So that could be a couple of different things. Genneagram. Are you guys familiar with the Genneagram? I don't know if people watching are familiar with the Genneagram. If you get The Emotionally Healthy Leader by Peter Scazzaro, this is his Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, both great books. But if you're a leader, Emotionally Healthy Leader, he talks about shadows in there. But he also talks about how we can trace our family. Basically, you're kind of making a family tree, but it's not just putting grandma and granddad's name. It's things about them that became identities within your family.
Wow.
Interesting.
So like so really you're discovering your family of origin.
Wow.
So or the family you were raised in, because maybe it's not your birth family, but the family you were raised in. So it might be like, hey, in my family, like my dad was one of 4 brothers. They all fought, and their last name was White. So this isn't a racial thing, but they would say the white boys can fight, and they were fighters.
Right.
They had a hot temper, and you didn't cross them, they would fight you, and they always had each other's back, and they never liked to work 8 to 5 jobs. You had to be self-employed. So I grew up, I'm not a fighter. So I couldn't fight you with my fists. I would fight you with my words.
Wow.
Because it's a part of, and then I just accepted anger is a virtue.
Wow.
That if you've got a hot temper, that means you're that's part of our family. That's who we are.
Right.
I was talking to somebody the other day. They said their family, they were fighters and scrappers, and they would hurt you. And so everybody knew if you say that name, those people will hurt you.
Wow.
They will mess you up. So we think those things don't affect us, but they do.
Right.
So it could be that. It could be negative scripts. A negative script is when a teacher, a mentor, a coach says something and they hand you a script and say, this is your lines in life.
Wow.
You are stupid. You'll never amount to anything. You're too fat. You're too tall. You're too short. You're too, whatever. So what are those negative scripts? All these take time to process.
Right.
And then painful childhood moments and memories. We go through this in our life transformation school, where we go back and look at some painful moments as a child, all those things affect you. You guys talk about that for a second.
Man, I don't really have anything.
No, I think that's. I mean, because
I'm sure immediately you thought of your family, something
yeah.
that's an
Absolutely.
identity. You don't have to share it to everyone, but because I didn't ask you to do that ahead of time. But it came to your mind, didn't it?
Absolutely, and I think that's so key to even the growth in the discovery of those shadows, is that it is okay to look back on your life and be somewhat critical, because not everything in your life was perfect.
And you're saying, I learned to cope with this thing
exactly.
that's not perfect. That I'm not bashing my family.
Right.
That's not the point.
Absolutely.
I'm just realizing that's an identity I took on that became a dysfunction in me that I don't want to identify with.
Right. And I think that was something for me that was really, really instrumental, was not being afraid to question some of those things that my family was doing and really step out of that. So, alcohol was a huge thing in our family. And at a really young age, I just kind of saw the effects of it in not necessarily my parents, but, the rest of my family. And then later on with everyone else. But it was eventually that place where I said, I don't really want this to carry on into the lineage of my family.
Right.
So let's just call it quits now.
Right.
And let's just make the decision that, hey, we're not gonna follow in those footsteps.
That's
let's make
so
that
good.
decision. But it was that cognizant decision of, hey, I recognize that these things, other people may look at them as, they just know how to have a good time, or they know how to relax or whatever. But for me, I saw it as, no, it can turn into something that maybe is not the best thing.
This is a propensity towards something. This is a weakness in our family that I'm going to cut off. That's not being religious. That's being smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me of, I think you might have said this in your message, I can't remember, but there's a quote that says, Jesus may live in your heart, but Grandpa lives in your bones.
Yes, yes.
And that, that may sound like, generational curses can't be broken. That's not true.
No.
Right.
But there is things that you've learned over your life.
Right.
From dad, from granddad, from grandma, like anybody.
That they learn from dad and granddad.
Right, exactly.
And
it's not that, God's grace isn't sufficient to change that. It's a journey of becoming aware of those things.
Yeah. And I don't even think it's necessarily that you're saying that what they did was bad, as much as you're now saying, well, this is leading me to have this shadow, or this shadow is leading me to have this outward behavior.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time to deal with the shadow.
And maybe they did do something bad, maybe they didn't, but it's irrelevant.
Right.
It's dealing with the issue within your own life. I've kind of changed that too, from Jesus may live in your heart, but Grandpa lives in your head.
Yeah, that's
because I can choose to reject that
That's
out of my
that's
thinking,
so good.
but he's in my head.
That's so good.
And then the whole negative scripts, we've all had those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dealing with
I still have those.
Yeah, we do, and we even know them, and they still affect us. Etc. So number 2, the second pathway, going through these quickly, identifying the source of my emotional add-ons.
I love this.
And so what's an emotional add-on? We actually mentioned it last week, thinking we'd already talked about it because I preached it, but we hadn't really talked about it, I don't think, in the podcast. But an emotional add-on, if you think of emotions on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being, you're just kind of emotionally dead, to 10 is you've gone ballistic.
Yeah.
Your veins are popping out of your head. If you have a level 8 emotional response to a level 3 situation, that's 5 add-ons.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example of myself real quick. We have a dog that we rescued. Her name's Honey. She's a very emotionally needy dog. She needs soul care very bad. Honey's a very ugly dog. God bless her. Her teeth are all messed. She needs braces. I've never seen a dog that needs braces. Honey needs braces. She's so deformed in her face. God bless her. We rescued her, and so we love Honey as best we can. But she lived outside she was bred. She was had a breeder. She worked, or she was like a part of a breeding thing, and so she lived outside and in very rough conditions. We got her. She had worms. We spent all this money to save her life and all this stuff. So I'm thinking the dog ought to have some gratitude, but she just, when she gets really emotionally distraught, she's not a puppy. She's like 5 or 6 years old, but she'll just, out of angst, she'll just go pee on the carpet. We only have like 3 rooms in our whole house that have carpet. She could pee anywhere on the tile. We have those wood planks that are tile, but they look like wood. Yeah. She could pee anywhere, not a problem. But no, she'll find the one stitch of carpet and pee on it. And so I came in the other day and I was so upset, I was so tired. I'd had a tough day. I went in and I was just wanting to sit down in my man cave and watch TV. And I go to step there and walk through the living room or the man cave, and I step down right in the puddle of pee. Man. I had my socks on, so then my socks I got pee socks on, and I'm just so mad. I was furious. So I'm ranting and raving and screaming. Probably not literally screaming, but pretty close. I might have been. I don't know. I'm an 8, so it
was possible.
It was probably screaming, and I didn't know it was screaming. But I was so furious. And, of course, the dog doesn't have a clue why I'm so upset.
Right.
She's, like, ready to go pee somewhere else because I've freaked her out. And so I didn't hit her or beat her, but my emotional response, and I probably text Chris, your dog peed in the floor again, and I've got to clean it up. And the whole time I'm cleaning it up, I'm just angry. Now, the dog peeing in the floor is a thing.
Right.
But it's not that big a thing.
Right.
Another time, a month or so before, the exact same scenario happened, and I just went and got the stuff. For a second, I went, oh, doggone it. Honey, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, well. And I went and got the stuff and cleaned it up. I don't even think I told Chris. I just let it go.
Just did it, yeah.
That's an appropriate.
Right.
We're not saying you're an emotional nothing.
Shut off everything.
You're a robot. But we're saying that it's not going overboard.
Yeah, that's.
So part of learning my shadow is why. Why am I doing that?
Right.
Why am I feeling this way? We made this statement, you tame your feelings by naming your feelings.
That's so good.
Last week you talked about talking to your kids about learning about their feelings.
Yeah.
Because most of the time we tell our kids don't have any feelings.
Yes.
Big boys don't cry.
Oh, absolutely.
So then, but that's stupid. You're going to cry.
Absolutely.
Life's going to, or you're going to bottle it up until
it's going to explode later.
It's going to come out as anger if it doesn't come out as crying.
Absolutely.
So wow. It's learning to deal with that.
That's so good.
Number 3, taking my thoughts captive before I'm captivated by my own thinking. So shameless plug for Hooperman, the book. Go on Amazon. Duane Watts, the author. Hooperman, HUPERman. There's a whole chapter on this. But the idea of Paul saying that we have to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, the context is, or you're going to live in a stronghold. The word strongholds is a castle. So either you're a prisoner to your own thought processes, or you imprison your thoughts.
That's good.
Wow.
You take them captive how do you take them captive to the obedience of Christ? Anything that exalts itself above the knowledge of God, part of the path, and we're still talking about a pathway to healing, a pathway to soul care, a pathway to dealing with your shadow. It's realizing my shadow is because of wrong thinking. So when that wrong thinking comes, I'm going to know the word of God. I'm going to know the truth.
Yeah.
And I'm going to speak it over that lie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody talk to me about
That's
that.
good.
I have something to throw in that. I've learned a lot about personally the difference between thoughts and feelings. I started counseling a couple months back, and he's really helped me talk through some of that, and I've realized I get so confused between the difference between things I'm feeling and things I'm thinking.
Wow.
That's good. Talk to us
and,
about it.
And
Counsel us.
yeah,
Help us.
no, I've realized that I would say, I was feeling like I wanted to do X, Y, Z. You know, I'm not gonna go into details, but like feeling like this, and he told me, well, that's not really a feeling, that's a thought. And when you're talking about taking thoughts captive, I thought, well, how do you take a thought captive unless you identify it? You think,
that's
oh,
good.
I'm thinking this.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get so anxious or you know, caught up in our feelings and things get emotional. We don't realize, oh, I'm not actually feeling like this, or maybe I'm feeling angry, maybe I'm feeling frustrated, but the thoughts I'm having are, you know, this situation
hit this
sucks.
person in the mouth.
or like, this situation sucks, I wish it wasn't happening.
Right.
And then and then you can spiral into, you know, my life is terrible, everything sucks.
Yeah.
You know, and so let's take those thoughts captive
You're
and trace
not
them
really
back.
feeling like your life is terrible. You're feeling
Exactly.
sad.
Right.
But you're thinking. That is so good.
Yeah, that's very
and
good.
thoughts come from one of three sources: God, the devil, or me.
Yeah.
If they come from God, I embrace them. If they come from the devil, I have to replace them.
Yes.
And if they come from me, I have to identify, is it one that lines up with God's thinking or the devil's thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good.
That's really good.
I think that, again, so I naturally think about everything all the time. This is how I am. But it is that, I think, especially for someone who's like constantly thinking, taking those thoughts. That's why I think I don't like sleeping in silence. Because do you sleep in silence?
Oh no, I have to have white
I
noise.
feel like if I'm in silence, I'm like, I could hear myself. It's the most.
Yeah,
it's the weirdest thing. But anyway,
creepy.
I think for me, I think that as I'm constantly thinking, I think that has been one of my biggest struggles, is taking my thoughts captive instead of letting my thoughts captivate me. Is because I can get stuck in these cycles or in these spirals of like overthinking, which eventually leads to some sort of destructive behavior, because now I'm stuck in this cyclical thinking. And so I think this whole series has been really beneficial to me, because it's really helped me to see that I can slow down even in that thought, even in that thinking, even in my thought processes. And actually I can take my thoughts captive. Yeah. I think that was something for me that was really big, was not knowing how, but also not knowing that I could.
Yeah.
That's good.
So good. So number 4, and we'll finish with this, is the fourth pathway is to deal with your shadows, is turn the light on.
Yes.
If you think about shadows, turn the light on. How do you turn the light on? There's 3 things: honesty, vulnerability, and humility.
Yeah.
So first of all, I got to be honest.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I can't, and listen, I can never be honest with God or anybody else if I can't be honest with me first.
That's so good.
So a lot of times we don't want to go into silence and solitude because we really know God knows anyway. I just don't want to tell him that I know he knows.
Wow.
Because I'm not being honest with me.
Yeah.
So it begins with honesty. Lying to myself doesn't change the truth.
That's right.
It only keeps me from letting the truth set me free.
Wow.
It's really good.
Let that sink in for a minute.
That's so good. Say it again.
Lying to myself doesn't change the truth. Just keeps the truth from setting me free.
Wow.
Yeah. So then vulnerability. We live in a world where we armor up.
Yeah.
You know, learning to be vulnerable. In our world, we defend ourselves. Jesus never defended himself. Get this, when I'm most vulnerable is when I'm most protected by the Father.
Wow.
When I make myself vulnerable is when God can protect me the most.
That's so good.
That's good.
And then humility. Am I willing? How do I respond when God shows me a shadow or somebody else? How do I respond when they say, "Hey, Mingo, that ain't right there. You got to deal with that." Do I run?
Yeah.
Do I go into fight or flight mode?
Right.
How do I deal with that? Psalms will end here. Psalms 91, kind of make a play on words here, says, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty.
Mm.
If my shadow is the accumulation of my dysfunction and my coping mechanisms, the shadow of the Almighty would be the accumulation of his goodness, his grace, and his glory.
Yeah.
So when I go to the secret place to abide, to dwell, then my shadow gets overtaken by the shadow of the Almighty.
Mm.
My life gets changed. You could say it this way: in the secret place, God can deal with my secret places.
Yeah.
And under the shadow of the Almighty, I can face the shadows of my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I hope this gives somebody the courage
Wow.
to begin to face their shadows. I hope this has helped you go on a journey. I hope you read some of the books we've talked about. I hope you listen to some of this and that it helps you towards emotional health. So Peter Scazzaro makes the comment. He says, you can't be emotionally unhealthy and spiritually mature. I understand his premise for that, but I disagree with the statement because I think if you tell people that, then they're thinking, well, I'm not spiritually immature. So even if
Never
it's
gonna deal
true,
with
yeah,
emotional-
even if it's true, I don't like it. But I think the issue is it's impossible. And you can turn the music on. We're ending. We're ending.
False
Sam got
alarm.
scared. He
Give
went,
him hope. Give him hope. Give him hope.
do I? Don't I? Yeah. Give them hope. Give them hope. But the reality is, I can't be emotionally unhealthy and it not affect my spirituality.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It affects my growth in some area.
Yeah.
So we want to fly high. We want to soar as high as we can. We want to go as far as we can. We want to grow as much as we can.
Yeah.
So if you want to be spiritually flying high, then you need to be emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
That I do agree with.
Yeah.
So hopefully this helps some people
Yes.
do that.
So
Next
good.
week, well, I hope it's next week. Hey, guys, listen, this is the end of this series, but I've been in negotiation. I mean, like, this is big time negotiation.
Yes, it has been.
With a star. I mean, this guy's a star YouTuber. He has his own YouTube channel. He's a big deal. And I mean, like, I've had to go to his people, and his people come to my people, and we're trying to get him as a guest. He's agreed.
He
but
has.
like, you know,
He
we're
has.
working out honorariums and things like that. What it's gonna take to get him. So one of Mingo's sons, Benji,
Yes.
Benjamin, the one and only. How old is Benji?
He is 7.
7 years old.
Yes.
It's like the coolest 7-year-old.
he's the
I've ever met.
coolest.
I'm serious.
He just thinks.
Oh man, he's a
so
thinker.
incredible.
I love
so,
it.
So tell him when you ask him if he would be on my podcast.
Yeah,
what he said.
so PD asked me, can Ben be at Benjamin Official? Could he be on the podcast? And Ben's immediate response, as soon as I asked him, was okay, but only if he'll be on one of my YouTube videos. So even at a young age, the dude's mind is
I love it.
amazing.
I love it. So there's no telling what he'll say, but we're gonna get some truth bombs
Yes.
from Benji.
Oh, so good.
So
I
so
love,
it's
yeah.
gonna be incredible.
And
It's-
you gotta be ready because he's gonna
he
gonna
might
go for
say
it.
anything.
He's gonna go for it.
Yeah, so
gonna be fun.
Be watching. Benji's coming. Well, like this, share it.
Yes.
Tune in next week. We say it every week. We'll say it again. We love you.
And
There's nothing you can do about it.